Okay, Chris Maloney. I teach 7th grade science at Suncrest Middle.
Joe Melia. I teach chemistry at Morgantown High School.
The first year we did it, we probably had about 10 kids that came out, because they didn't know what it was all about. They just heard science and they were interested in science, so they came out, maybe 10 to 12. But since then, once you get the ball rolling, then every year we probably get about 30 kids between 6th, 7th, and 8th grade that come out. And it's just, it kind of is self-sustaining once you get it started. And they stay after school. We do Mondays for an hour and a half after school. And, it's been able to kind of sustain itself because we have been successful. And they also know that there's a high school program that they will get to move on to.
Well, things are a lot different now than what they were when I started. Because when I started my first year, there was only 4 kids on the team. And then I started getting all the science and math teachers at the high school to tell me who their top 3 or 5 students were. Not just best grades, but who they thought were really fast thinkers. And so those teachers would give me a list, and then I'd just check them, see if there was any duplicates across the thing, and then I'd send out letters to a bunch of those kids in the high school saying, hey, you've been nominated to be on this team. It's this elite academic team, and I got a lot of interest then, and then I grew. The second year we had like 15, and then it went up even more and more, and then once you start winning, then it was just like, and once we had the middle school start, because the middle school wasn't around at that point.
Right.
But once they had it, then it was just like, well, those kids automatically came, when are we starting practice? As soon as they get there, their freshman year. So
how did you guys start that relationship then?
Well, I think and to play off of what Joe said, I think it was easier for me to start the middle school program because the kids that are highly motivated already knew that they would be going to Morgantown High, and there was that program at Morgantown High. So I think that made it easier for me to get the program started because they knew that high school program was in place. And for me, I didn't know anything about Science Bowl until my son was in high school and he did Science Bowl with Joe. And then I found out that there was a middle school program. So the next year I decided I need to try and get this started at the middle school. And I don't ask the other math and science teachers for recommendations, but I do ask them to kind of promote it in their classes, to build it up and talk to kids that they think might be interested. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think our kids have more communication than actually we do.
Yeah.
We see each other very infrequently at competitions and whatnot, but even some of my students in the high school, they still come here and help out middle school too. So they always talk.
Yeah, I kind of communicate, like you said, through them. Oh, what are you guys practicing? What's Mr. Melia doing now?
Mm-hmm.
So they're kind of our conduit. And it's also nice that the high school kids, until they get really busy, will come back and help. So they get volunteer hours, but then they also help. Mm-hmm. And I use them as a resource a lot because, it's been a while since I've done some of the chemistry and things. So I'll just, here, you guys explain this one.
We go, at the beginning of the year, it's only once a week. We start pretty soon, right after the year begins, but it's on Tuesdays. And we go for an hour and a half. And then once we get closer to the first competition, we do Tuesdays and Fridays. And that lasts the majority of the year, going twice a week until finally Nationals is over with. I don't take kind of a break. But it's basically all year round, practicing.
Pretty much the same for us. I don't usually start till after Labor Day, just because there's so much in a middle school, they have to kind of settle in. So after Labor Day, we'll start that first Monday after Labor Day, and we do Mondays for an hour and a half. And I usually do just Mondays until I've got my first and second team picked, and then that second team will just practice. Anybody that wants to still come after I've picked the teams, they can come on Mondays. My focus is still on first and second team. But then on Fridays, we do about an hour with just the first and the second team. And when we get closer to competition, I close the Monday practices too to just my first and second team, so we can really focus on getting them ready.
I mean, we just go through little mock tournaments, and it depends. Sometimes it depends on who the students are, but like I have a couple students that are extremely fast at anticipating questions and things. So I have to be careful of how I manage the teams, or they're just going to be answering all the questions, and nobody else, even if they're really good, they're still not going to be answering anything because they're not as fast as those two. So that's why it's really important to have two practices for us, because actually on one of those days, those two are not there. You know, and it happens like that sometimes if you just have a really fast, it's good, or make them read or do something, because everybody needs a chance to answer their questions, you know. But anyway, we just go through and answer questions in little tournaments, keeping score, talking about, you know, what they did wrong, if they like interrupted and it was an incorrect, or my biggest pet peeve, one team interrupts, and then for no reason at all, the other team interrupts on top of that.
Yeah, we do that too. I thought that was just a middle
But there's
school
a whole
thing.
kinds of little strategy things that we go over at practice. It is not really to learn content at all at practice. It's to work as teams. It's to anticipate questions. It's that kind of thing.
So for me, it depends on the group I have. I've been fortunate that a lot of times I have one or two kids that are just really good, and then the other they practice on their own lots of times, and they will study together and they will help each other. I've had some years where I haven't had quite as, you know, they haven't been quite as strong academically. So if they haven't been quite as strong, then I'll do a little bit of instruction, because I know the kind of content that they don't get exposed to necessarily in middle school. So I'll kind of fill in the blanks with some of those things. Like we don't do simple machines anymore. So I'll do a little quick run through of the simple machines, because there's always simple machines questions in middle school. So most of our practices are the same kind of thing, working in that team. I'll have the kids practice, you know, I'll sub kids out that are really strong and make them keep score or make them run the clock so that the other kids get a chance. But we do the same thing. We do a lot of practice questions. So for probably at least 45 minutes, in an hour and a half practice, we're going to be doing practice questions in that format of, you know, kind of giving pointers how not, you know, don't interrupt, don't, you know, and what all that means. But some years I spend a little more time instructing, not a lot, but I'll give them assignments. I have a lot of PowerPoint and Google slides that I've developed over the years, so I'll post them to the Google Classroom and I'll tell them, you need to look over this. And when we come back next time, we're going to talk about it, you know. And so I'll 15 minutes maybe do a little bit of instruction to kind of beef up the things that they're weak in.
Off the national site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mostly the national site for us too. I've also used, there are some other resources that I've used that, like there's a Quizlet Live and a quizzes and a Kahoot site that if you just search, there are National Science Bowl questions sets that are on those. So I'll use those too sometimes for the kids. That's a little more of a gaming format, and they're speed related too. So that helps the kids kind of be a little faster also.
But there's so many questions on the national site, and I tell the students, do not study those questions. You know, because it's going to be very apparent if they study those questions. All I have to do, I have 15 years of questions, and so if I feel like a student is answering questions too fast, and I think maybe they have seen these questions, all I do is, and I'm writing down every time what particular year and what set we're using in practices, so I'll just make a switch. And if I switch the questions and all of a sudden a student stops answering questions, then, you know, I warn them. That's like the biggest thing you don't want to do is let me know that you're sitting there looking at those questions and that's the only reason why you're answering. And that's like a big no-no.
Yeah, I have the same thing. It's very apparent when a kid is just memorized around. It's very obvious. So I tell them the same thing. You know, once we've done around, go ahead and use that to help you study the things you didn't get but don't come in here having memorized those rounds because it'll be very obvious. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, in order to pick the teams, in high school, in order to be competitive in nationals, you must have students really focus in on one subject area. So there must be someone that's his main focus is biology, and one chemistry, and one math, and one physics. And these kids, they sit there and they study. They can't get all the content that they need for the nationals competition with the classes that they're taking in high school. Even if they're taking all the upper level AP classes, they will not get all the information they need. So they are studying, they are picking up other textbooks. They're in there telling me to order textbooks off of Amazon, saying I heard that this was a great second-year chemistry book, or I need an organic chemistry book, or I heard that this physics book really delved into, theoretical things. And I'm like, okay, so we buy those textbooks, and those kids are taking them home and just studying them, self-studying stuff. So that's why the reason why I think Morgantown and Suncrest, I don't know, but I can only speak to Morgantown, has been so successful is because they work so hard. I had started giving my textbooks that I had, like my organic chemistry textbook from college. I let them start studying that. But then they go on and they start talking to a bunch of peers nationwide of people that have gone to chemistry camp or bio camp, and they talk, oh, this book is great, and then they write it down, they give it to me, order that book, so they have a big network of students, especially when they go to the National Science Bowl a bunch. They network with all those kids, and those kids just give out all that information. Everybody wants to help everybody,
My kids, I'll have every year one or two kids that are really well beyond their middle school years in their science knowledge, and they'll have their parents buy them textbooks. And I have some textbooks that I've had from, my kids, or that they can check out and use. A lot of what my kids use, resource-wise, there are a lot of YouTube channels that they're looking at. They look at the Khan Academy. So some of them use textbooks, but a lot of them use different YouTube channels. And I also use TED Ed a lot. They're real short 5-6 minute videos, and lots of times I'll show those at the beginning of class because it doesn't have a lot of content, but it will have sort of something that kind of sparks their interest, and then they go and they research more information about that. So I guess that's the main thing. Also, in middle school, I don't tell them to focus on just one content area. Sometimes you have kids in middle school that are really focused on, like right now I have one kid who just loves chemistry. That is his thing. But in middle school, I do tell them to try and, they should have a good general knowledge, but I try and tell them to pick one or two, maybe two things, maybe two topic areas that they are really interested in, and kind of focus on those. And you have to have a math person. You just have to have a math person, because those questions, right?
Budget-wise, I don't think you really need a budget. I mean, that's what's great about the National Science Bowl. They cover everything. This is just for the kids. That I don't feel like I have any expenses except those textbooks. But those textbooks, I don't know. You can get cheap textbooks. You don't have to get, new. But
Right.
So it doesn't really cost much. And in terms of advice, don't push the kids too hard. I mean, I don't know. The kids are going to work. I like to motivate them. I like to make it fun. I like to have a good relationship with them. I like to give them a space where they can come together and enjoy being around other really smart kids. But I'm not going to push them. I tell them, if you want to be competitive, this is what you need to do. But I'm not saying, hey, you need to read chapters 1 through 6 of this extra textbook by a certain date. That's on them, because they're going to work as hard or not as hard as they want, and I'm not here to make them unhappy, and so just don't push them like that.
Yeah, and same thing. I don't think you need a lot of money. We didn't have much when we started. I just had old textbooks that were my kids', which we used a little bit. Even the buzzer system, we bought, so we have the buzzer system that you guys use. But when we started, I just bought those little bells, and put them in teams. Is that what you?
Most of the time, we're still using the bells.
Yeah.
I mean, we have
and those aren't very
a $500
expensive.
buzzer system, but it's just a pain to get it out all the time when little bells work.
And I tell the same. I mean, I let the kids set their own goals. Once we have our teams formed, I just talk to them about, what's your goal? What do you guys want to do? Because I like it to be fun too. That's why we do kind of game format sometimes instead of just questions, because they love the games. Mm-hmm. But I let them set their goal. What is it that you want to do? Do you want to, win at the state level? And if you win at the state level, what's your goal after that? Again, it's an after-school program. I'm not going to provide the motivation. I'll provide the place. I'll provide the supervision. They have to bring the motivation. And I think every school probably has at least some kids that have that keen interest, and you just have to figure out who those kids are and maybe show them a video of a competition and kind of to whet their interest. So, and I like the fact that you guys, when we go to the competitions here, it's not all about who's first. It's, I feel like all the kids, you've got prizes first through fourth, you have activities for the other kids, so I think that really places the focus not just on winning, but on the learning aspect of it. And I think that's where the coaches need to focus on. It's not so much who wins, it's the fact that you're getting an opportunity to really practice some skills and hone in on some things that you wouldn't get to do during a normal school day. I see myself as the adult supervision for the middle schoolers, and just kind of supporting them, because the competition is, even at competition day, it's tense, and it's, so I just I feel myself acting more as an emotional support than as a coach. As a coach, I just sit there and keep score. I don't even want to, just kind of providing that adult supervision and just encouragement, I guess.
Yeah, I'm at practices, I'm just there to read questions and help make it fun. Yeah. Joke around with the kids, and then give them advice and things. But you're right, it's when it gets down to serious competition, they need emotional support. Yeah. They're still kids.
Yeah, they are.
So is there any place that either one of you feel like you can grow in this mentorship or coaching perspective, or anything that you would like to implement over the next couple of years with regards to your program to help them grow? Or is this, you feel like you've sort of peaked development wise and it's sort of tuning to what kids you get the next year?
I always feel like it's a fine line, because we've gone to the nationals I think like 8 or 9 times lately, and some of those coaches, they're die hard, in terms of, you do this, you do that, and I don't want to cross that line with my kids, because I want them to have fun, and I don't want to push them to do things that they may not want to do, make them work harder than what it is, because I think they're already amazing, and I don't want to force them to do anything.
And I feel the same way. You go to nationals and you do see all these kids and these coaches that are real. They are pretty intense. And sometimes when I think, oh man, I could do a little more to help get the kids prepared. But then on the other hand, same thing. I always tell the kids it's not me. It's not my motivation that's going to help you be successful. It's, you have to find that motivation yourself. I'll support you. I'll give you whatever resources I can give you, but I want them to do what they want to do. I want it to be a fun thing for them, because if it's fun for them, it's fun for me. So,
is there anything else you all want to add to this conversation, or items of general advice that you'd like to sort of throw out to the world?
I don't know.
Big palette. But is there any items essentially that come to mind that you're like, I would like to say that too?
Oh, I can't really think of anything.
No, I wish that there was I wish all middle schools and had a team, and all high schools had a team, because it's a lot of fun. You don't have to be a top tier school to do well and enjoy Science Bowl. I mean, it's just fun. It's a day when all these kids get together, and they're all great kids, and they're all very intelligent, and they're all going places. So regardless of how the competition ends and what place you are, like you said, they're all great kids.
Right.
So if there's any teachers out there in schools where they don't have those teams, I encourage you to get involved with it, because it is a great experience and you're dealing with really great kids that are motivated.
And the kids make friends at the regional, at the national. They just make a lot of contacts and they stay in touch with those kids. So that's a really nice thing too. They're seeing kids from other schools, and I think that's a really positive thing for them too. So for coaches out there, if they, science teachers, coaches, I would encourage them to have a co-coach, have somebody to do it with them, because that makes it a little easier. It seems a little less burdensome, I think.
It's a really good point there. And I was going to say something about that, because the co-coach that we have now, we have such a large number in the beginning of the year with all different abilities. You can't have freshmen that haven't studied textbooks beyond what they've done in class in the same room competing with kids that have been studying not only higher level classes but also additional materials. It doesn't work, because those kids can get very discouraged. So we'll split them up, and one of the coaches will take some new people on the team, and one of us will take the veterans, and because we want everybody to get a chance to answer some questions.
Yeah, and we did the same thing at the last few years. We had enough kids that we ended up splitting them up, and the same thing. If we had those new kids that had never experienced this before, they would have just been discouraged right from the start. So we split them up. But for someone just starting a team, it's still good to have a co-coach just to bounce ideas off of, and just to help, especially with middle schoolers. They can be a little squirrely.